Well, I have to be careful of them. Yeah, I have to be careful of them. I'm afraid of them. I'm terrible.
Folks, we just ask that you double check your cell phones are on silent or vibrate before the service begins. Thank you very much. Right around this way here, if you would. All right.
But he has the first shot. He hasn't gotten the second shot. Yeah, and they have gotten. Yeah. Oh, yeah. But and then give him the second shot unless he tests negative. So I'm hoping. He was in the hospital at the time. He was in the hospital. But he's hanging in there. It's gonna be 97 next month. Next month. Now, where does he got the heart attack.
Okay. Folks, we're going to begin, so we'll just have you come right over here.
Snowy day to be standing in outdoors, paying respects to someone. The truth is that when someone like Dorothy Dottie Shiller leaves this world, it doesn't matter what's going on outside. We stop and we take the time to say farewell to her in an honorable and loving way. And let the snow fall. We're not going to take notice right now. We have other things to focus on. You know, it's interesting, when we moved to Waterbury 21 years ago, so Arnold and Dottie were one of the couples that welcomed us into town and welcomed us into the synagogue. And you'll excuse me if I call her Mrs. Shiller. Okay, to us, she was, and to our community, she had that title Mrs. Shiller. And she really, really was a special person who made a very, very special mark on the community. I was struggling a bit to come up with words to say about her, and I called my brother Srilly, that so many of you know, who was so close to her and to Arnold, and who felt like family. And he told me that he wishes he could be here in person, but if he can't be here in person, at least he'd like to share something. He sent me an email, and I want to read with you what he sent me, because I think that from the vantage point of the community of Waterbury, there could be no more beautiful words than that. And then we'll turn to the family, and I'd love to hear some memories from family members as well. Recollections and reflections. It is hard to believe that our beloved Mrs. Shiller was taken from us. She was so alive. She had a vibrant presence that filled up the neighborhood. Farmington Avenue was her fiefdom, but there was no one in the greater Jewish community of Waterbury that was not impacted by her. Mrs. Shiller was the honorary Bubby of our neighborhood. Most children, my own included, lived far away from their own grandparents. Mrs. Shiller, together with Arnold, may he be well, graciously stepped into the role of Bubby and Zadie. They took great pride in this job. The children were always given undivided attention. They could talk to Mrs. Shiller about anything on their mind, and she would always have some advice from her own life experience. She made sure to stock sweets for them, taking care that our specific kosher standards were taken into account. I can still remember the excitement in my young children's voices when they spotted the Shillers manning their observation post, the chairs positioned in front of their house. Tati, Mommy, the Shillers are out. We're going to schmooze with them. If the small, well-worn piano in 161 Farmington Avenue could have spoken, it would have much to say about Mrs. Shiller. A classic Jewish mother, she was a great lover of Yiddish songs, and one could hear the sounds of legendary tunes wafting from her living room window to the street below. It made no difference that decades had passed since she learned the songs. The yearnings and hopes represented in those tunes were part and parcel of who she was. Even after the move from Farmington Avenue to Farmington, Connecticut, the piano remained part of her life. Arnold, known to us as Mr. Shiller, was a neighborhood hero, a living, breathing veteran of the armed forces who was actually a prisoner of the Germans during the Second World War. Yet his biggest fan was undoubtedly Mrs. Shiller. She and her husband were inseparable. She often encouraged us to speak to him about his experience and to ask him about Waterbury of old. They would go for walks together and were dedicated shul goers for decades. Her adoration was reciprocated. Although Mrs. Shiller had various health challenges throughout the years, I have rarely seen a husband as dedicated, patient, and gentle as Mr. Shiller. Several years ago, around this time of year, Mr. Shiller came over to our house on a Shabbos afternoon to study about the upcoming holiday of Purim. He thoroughly enjoyed himself. Yet, at a certain point in our lesson, he abruptly looked at the clock, and this man in his 80s exclaimed, "I got to get back home quick. My wife's going to think I left her." Our holidays in Waterbury took on a different dimension with the Shillers. We had built our little sukkah in the yard of our house. And then, like so many in the neighborhood, we visited with family in New York for the first part of the holiday. When we returned, we found that our sukkah had been decorated by Mrs. Shiller, complete with a chair and a place to read. She loved enjoying the holidays with us, and despite coming from a different background, she showed an interest in hearing new ideas and new thoughts. Mr. and Mrs. Shiller may have been our adoptive Bubby and Zadie, but family was family. They looked forward to the visits of their children and had deep pride in their grandchildren. For days before their grandson Jacob visited, Mrs. Shiller told us all about him and his various witty adventures. By the time he came, we felt like we already knew him. The Shiller children were dedicated and visited often. Mrs. Shiller happily babysitted for Frankie, Holly's dog, while using the opportunity to give my own children extracurricular education in canine care. No matter where she went, Mrs. Shiller connected to people around her. The abrupt move out of Waterbury was very difficult, but when we visited her and Mr. Shiller in their new home, we found a small replica of the love and warmth in their new apartment, 161 Farmington, Connecticut. Mrs. Shiller assumed a new retinue of friends and admirers, and as mentioned, became the Grand Duchess of the sitting room piano. After informing her of our move to Muncie, New York, she said, "Oh, now you'll forget about us." We took her up on her dear, and we feel privileged that we remained part of her life for years thereafter. We will never forget Mrs. Devorah Shiller, Dottie Shiller, and the way she impacted our lives. She will forever live in our hearts and thoughts. May her memory be a blessing, and may her family be comforted among the mourners of the Jewish nation. I'm going to ask, instead of doing a formal eulogies of the family, I'm going to ask if it would be possible for any family members just to share a small thought or a small memory, as small or even as insignificant as you think. It's very, very special today to remember those thoughts.
This is just a glimpse into recent times. Unfortunately, my mother, I'm Holly, and my mother, she battled cancer, breast cancer, for many, many years. And so it was fairly recent. I remember taking her to an appointment, and it was a beautiful building, a cancer building that they have. I forget the name of it, but it's a beautiful building. It had this huge lobby with a baby grand piano. And I remember taking her in the car over to the oncology place, and she had such a hard time getting there. She was so sick. She was nauseated. She couldn't get comfortable in a chair. She was as thin as a toothpick. I mean, she really did look very emaciated. She gets in the wheelchair, they bring her in, she sees the baby grand piano, and she lit up, and I want to play it. So I went over and I asked, and I got her set up on the piano there. And, unbeknownst to the people who work there, she was a very talented musician, a talented piano player, a talented singer. And she sat down and she played like she always did. Like, they looked at her, she's an old woman, she's very frail, very, very weak. She sat down, I don't know what they were thinking she was going to play, or she was just going to bang on the piano a little bit. And she just started playing like she always did. It was in her fingers, it was in her body, it was automatic. She had that skill and that talent that it's just unbelievable. And I sat there and I watched and it was surreal for me, because I was thinking, this woman doesn't have too much time left, and it's going to be such a shame when she leaves, because the music will leave with her. And to this day, it was just earth-shaking for me. I was in awe. The people and the staff were in awe when she played, and she lit up from playing. So that's my story. I'm gonna miss my mother. I feel like I have a little hole in my heart right now.
I probably spent the most time with them a year later. So I have a few more stories.
It'd be easier for you to stand here?
Yeah, can you speak
Yeah.
louder?
They were still in Waterbury. This is an example of my mother. She was probably in her 70s or 80s. She was the neighborhood watch, the one-woman neighborhood watch. She was like the Mrs. Kravitz of Farmington Avenue. And one night, she saw some young guys acting suspiciously in her backyard. So she opens up the bathroom window and yells out, "The jig is up!" And they took off. That's a sample of my mother. When she met the hospice nurse for the first time, the nurse called me and said, "Your mother is delightful." The minute I met her, she said, she pointed to your father and she said, "He's the nice one. Everybody loves him. And I'm the pain in the neck." Mom and Dad bickered quite a bit. Part of it was Mom loved to talk and Dad was very hard of hearing. So she would get frustrated. So every once in a while she called me and she said, "The marriage isn't working out. I'm going to divorce your father." But we knew they loved each other. In fact, recently when my father was in the hospital for a period of time, I was talking to him and he said, "You know, your mother came and visited me," which was completely impossible. First of all, COVID, one visitor, 30 minutes, and my mother wasn't going anywhere. So I told him, I tried to explain to him that Ma couldn't have visited him, but we could call her. So we called her, and I figured she'd corroborate. So I said, "Mom, Dad missed you so much that he thinks he had a visit from you." She said, "I did come." I was thinking this morning, when I was a little girl, we went to Halloween News. Some of the people who've been in Waterbury a long time probably remember that store. I was about 5 years old, and we were on the elevator, and I wasn't looking up. So when the elevator stopped, I got off, not realizing that my mother didn't get off with me. And I stood out there crying, and I had that same sense today. And it was sad because I knew she wasn't coming back down to get me. But I'll treasure every moment that I had with her, and I'll love her to the end of my days.
I'm Dave. I just have a few little things I could say about my mom. My memories as a young child is that she saved me at least twice, like a hero. Once from falling down a little cliff in the backyard. And if you knew my mom, she was a walker, but I wouldn't call her an athlete. But I was falling down this cliff that was fairly steep down to the next road, and one of my friends went and got her, and she hopped over a wall like I have never seen her before. Grabbed me by an arm and yanked me up, and that was it. And then another time when I was being bullied in school, I didn't even know she knew, and she just showed up, right when things were about to happen at the end of school. I didn't even expect her to even be there, and she just stopped these kids in their tracks. And again, relating to her piano, we all gave her probably a lot more grief than she deserved, but listening to her play throughout our childhood was really a nice experience, especially in retrospect. She did have a beautiful voice and she was a beautiful piano player. And the last time I saw her, we got her a little piano and we had a little visit outside in the fall. And as she was playing, she would turn and say, "I don't think I can play anymore." And she would continue to play the songs. And she said, "I don't remember these songs at all. I can't really play this piano. As her hands were just going on and on, and she was playing her music. And one thing that I'll always remember from her is you might not have thought of her as an optimist, at least in the later years, but wherever she was, you know, at the Gables, at the hearth, the last time I saw her, she would say, you know, the food isn't very good here. We're looking for another place. Love you, Mom. I guess we should have collaborated on our stories. Two of mine were taken and were really the two I wanted to share. I remember Donnie Murphy coming up, and he was hard of hearing, and I actually remember it was a long time ago, and he was trying to explain, Dave, you're hanging from the cliff. And finally, I don't know if you remember the old O.J. Simpson commercials. I didn't know my mother had it in her. And she did. I think she actually jumped over that fireplace. One thing about my mom, she was quirky. She was eccentric. She was grumpy, but you're never going to meet anybody who wore her heart on her sleeve like my mother. She always knew where she stood. You couldn't help but love her. We're going to miss the heck out of her. I hope she enjoys the big grand piano in the sky. I know she's playing on it. I know she's looking down at us right now. We're going to miss her. We love you, Mom. And I'm glad this disease didn't torture you any more than it had to. But thank everybody for coming.
Please.
Hi, I'm Ryan. I'm one of her grandsons. And anyone who knew her could definitely describe her as she's a little quirky sometimes. But one of the things I'm most grateful for is the example she set for me. Her and my grandfather together, they set the most amazing example for family and marriage that I could ever have. And I'm so blessed to have that example in my life. I'll never forget as a little kid seeing Grandma on the porch at her perch in her chair with her do-rag on, hanging out, watching her going up and down the road. I wouldn't have messed with her. But always having her matzo ball soup and bringing the kitchen, you name it. But hopefully the most comfortable chair she's ever sat in is waiting for her up there. And if I could say anything about her, she's unique. And there's never going to be another woman like her in my life.
Yes, my name is Chaim Bernstein, member of the Shiller community. The Shillers have been, as Rabbi Sumter mentioned, a part of the community since we came. God, he had some beautiful, beautiful qualities, just from the outside. Person, smiley, interested people. She was really overjoyed, I think, with the growth of the community and its rebirth, rejuvenation. For us, I just want to mention, I think we're senior is really coming to the end of an era terms of the community that we found when we came here. And that's, in the Jewish religion, something that's very difficult for us, because that's a connection to a past that we're not really going to see anymore, in terms of the generation that saw things that we did not see. Being able to transmit a certain feeling of commitment to Judaism, to what we stand for as a people, that's something that's very difficult to reinvent. And especially something like Dottie, who really lived her life, I believe, based on the ideals that were taught to her by her parents and where she came from. That's a tremendous loss for us. See that kind of person, that bridge, who's no longer here anymore. I used to see her, and she was really, she's a delightful person to be around. He's a Baruch. We should be blessed.
Been to many funerals, and I've heard many eloquent eulogies in the last years. But I don't know if I've ever heard a eulogy as eloquent as this family coming together and sharing memories and laughing and crying mixed together, which is something that only someone who really had that kind of unbelievably loving and powerful impact on a family can provide. I'm very grateful that Mr. Aaron Saperman is here. He was the chazan of the shul since the days that the yeshiva first arrived. And as someone who appreciated music as much as she did, I'm sure it was a highlight for her to be able to hear him on the High Holy Days. And I asked him to say the memorial prayer.
My name is Aaron Saperman. I'm one of the original students of the yeshiva. And Rabbi Kalish, when we got here the first day, Rabbi Kalish lived across the street from the Shillers. And I can say honestly, literally the first day I got here 21 something years ago, the second set of people that I met were Arnold and Dottie Shiller. And she asked me, does anybody of the boys sing? I said, uh-oh. And needless to say, every time I met her, or every time I met her in the street, which was very often, as she had a custom to patrol with her cane up and down Farmington Avenue. And we felt secure when we saw her out there. No, I mean, I'm not saying this in a joking fashion. We really felt she was looking out for us. I don't think there was ever a time when I spoke to her where she wouldn't speak about how proud she was to be a part of our community. And I can second how proud we are to have had her in our community. It gave her tremendous joy to see the students growing up. My kids, I went to visit her a few times. But I owe her a tremendous debt of gratitude, because I spent many hours in their living room. She went through records and old records and put them on the player, and she would play me certain pieces of music. And then she would make me sing. And Arnold would sit there, and Dottie would sit there, and they'd make me sing. And when I would finish, he'd say, do it again. And I would sing, and this is many years ago. But she was critiquing me. And when I was finished davening for the Yamid, she would come over to me and she'd say it was beautiful. However, listen to me. I appreciated it. Or now I start realizing how much I appreciate it. So for that, I owe you a debt of gratitude. It's been a long time since we've seen you. But I can assure you that we'll all miss you. Our community will miss you. From what I have heard briefly, I know your family will miss you. And the world will miss people like you. People who love people. People who love Music. Music is the language of the soul. Music is the language we all share in any country. And she had a tremendous love for music, not just because it was something that looked good on a resume or because it was something to talk about, because music is the language of the soul. And Dottie Shiller was a woman of the soul. So for that, I thank you. And we'll all miss you. El Malay Rachamim Shoichein Bamroimim Hamtsevenu Chonechoina Al Kanfe Ashchina B'Ma'ala Yiskidoishim Utahoirim Kizoyar Rokia Mazhirim Es Nishmas Tvoira Bas Hershel Shalchaloi Lama Babu Shanachnu Mispaulim Bad Haskaras Nishmasa Bigan Eden Tehei Menuchosa Lochein Baba Rachamim Yastidel B'Seisek Nafov L'Olamim B'Yitzroi B'Yitzroi Rachayim Es Nishmasa Adonai hu nachaloso V'sonuach b'shalom al mishkavo v'noimar Amen.
Our custom is to try to participate as much as possible in the burial. And I know it's a cold day and we've been standing outside for a while. The idea is that we want to take care of Dottie until the very, very last minute. And for a family that took such wonderful care of her when she was alive, the end of that mitzvah is to leave with a sense of having taken care of her till the last drop to her final resting place.
Rabbi, excuse me 1 second. We're just gonna.
One way that we show our hesitancy in terms of the burial is that the first shovelful of dirt that we fill, we use the back of the shovel, which is kind of awkward, and we do that because it's awkward, because we want to show in every way that we can how hesitant we are to say this goodbye. Anybody who wants to participate?
Wanted to go maybe easier on the other side so you don't need to stand on the wood. Said originally Thursday at 11. I told
Space. So we can walk.
want the wood? Yeah.
Watch that right there. Yeah, that. Don't get any. Yeah.
Yona, right over there. Watch your.
My brother was Arnold and Daddy's next door neighbor. Yeah, he was in elementary school.
Thanks. No problem.
All right, Rabbi said, let's make it now. Before there was a kingdom here, they've been outside for a long time. Okay, we're gonna move over here. Okay, and then we'll do the tzedek adin and the kaddish.
Not good to go. Or the eater bag. No, it's in the white bag. Target. Oh, you see it? Oh, you see it? Yeah.
Okay.
Ronnie opened it.
Folks, we're going to continue on with the service.
We end the service with a prayer that recognizes that everything that God does is for the good, even when we're having one of those days where we're experiencing the difficulties. And then we carry on with the Kaddish. Now, the Kaddish that you have in front of you for the children is a mourner's Kaddish, but there is a special paragraph in the beginning that you don't have there on the paper. So my friend Ben is going to say the Kaddish out loud, and you'll be able to just say with him that first part, and then you'll swing in. You'll see that the rest of it will be familiar. Okay. Hatzur tamim paloi ki chol derachov mishpat elamuna v'eino vel tzadik v'yasharu Hatzur tamim b'chol poyal miyoymer loi matifol ashalit v'mato v'ma'al me'misum chayem oirid shoel v'yoal Hatzur tamim b'chol ma'aseh miyoymer elov mata'aseh hoimer v'oisech esed chinam lo nusaseh ובזכוס הנעקד כיסא הקשיבה ועשה צדיק בכל דרכו ועצור תומם ערך אפיים ומלא רחמים חמולנו וחוסנו על אבויס ובונים כי לכו אדוין הסליחויס והרחמים צדיקתו אדוינו לאומניס ולאחיויס אשר ביודך פקדוין כל רוחויס חלילה לך זכרויננו למחויס ויונו עיניך ברחמים Oleinu fekuchos ki lecha adoinu rachamim v'haslichos adamim ben shana yiyeh eleshonim yichyeh ma yisroin loy keloi hoyo yiyeh baruch dayano emes me'misum chayeh baruch hu ki emes dinoyim shoitei takol be'einoyim shaleim be'adam cheshboinoi v'dinoi v'akol lishmoi Oy doyoy teinu yodanu adonai ki tzedek mishpotecha titztak v'dovrecha v'sizke v'shoftecha ve'ein leharher Achar midas shoftecha tzadikato adonai v'yoshor mishpatecha dayan emes shoifei tzedek ve'emes baruch dayanu emes shekol mishpatov tzedek ve'emes nefesh kol chai biyodecha tzedek molo yiminecha v'yodecha rachem al kulei tason yodecha v'soimer lam maloch Eref yodecha gidoy lo eitzav v'ravo alili asher einecha v'gufeis al kol darchei b'nei odom loseis leish k'drachav וכפרימה על הלוב להגיד כי יושר אדוני צורי ולא יבלוס סבוי אדוני נוסן ואדוני לא כך יהי שם אדוני מבורך ולא רחום יכפר אבוין ולא ישחז והרבו להושיב אפוי ולא יאיר כל חמוסוי
Yisgadash, Shmi Rabo, Almadihu Asir, Istadotlo, Chaya, Isaya, Haska, Chaya, Alma, Livnei Karta, Yerushalayim, Israel, Echalei, Gava, Me'akar, Tana, Ra, Me'ara, Ra'asava, Ufana, Yishmaya, Ra'asra, Yamlich, Shah, Rehu, Mufusai, Kare, Nayekoin, Yemekon, Naye, Kol Beis Israel, Ma'agala, Ubisman, Kare, Bimru, Amen.
Amen.
Yehei, Rabbe, Yisbarach, Yishabach, Yisbahar, Yisramam, Yisnasei, Yishadar, Yishalech, Yishalal, Shmei Dekudsha, Berichu, Le'elah, Min Kol, Birchasa, Vishirasa, Tushbechasa, Benechemasa, the Amiram Ba'alma, Vimru, Amen. Yehei, Shlama Rabba, Min Shemaya, Dayim, Aleinu, Yakol, Yisrael, Vimru, Amen. Say Shalom, Yisrael, Yaseh Shalom Aleinu, Yakol, Yisrael, Vimru, Amen.
We're going to form two rows right over here, and Daddy's children will walk in between the two rows, and we'll say the traditional words of mourning to them as we end the service.
So we'll just have you line up two sides here. There you go.
Over here. Oh, this side?
It's such an incredible service to see so many people so devoted on such a cold day outdoors. Really appreciate everyone coming, and a special mention of the people that came from the synagogue who have such early memories of her when we first arrived in town and participated. We're really grateful for their participation.